I'm going to tell y'all right now, all of these wonderful people would not be here without Patreon supporters like you. If you enjoy credible news, reviews, and commentary on UFOs and UAPs 5 days a week, you want to support this show. What's your name? Marty. Marty, look how easy this is, Marty. Pick up your phone. Boom! You're a Patreon member. I mean, look, it's so easy. You just click the link, which is right here. Just for $1 a month, you can support this show. Just fill out the information and pledge what's comfortable for you. It could be $1, $5, $10, or who knows. Just support.
Hello and welcome to the Unidentified Celebrity Review. I'm really excited to start this week off with all you. We have one of the most interesting voices in the community joining us today. It's going to be an engaging conversation. It's also great seeing you all in the live chat here. Hey, Kenny I Wound, Zero Cool, Earth versus Uranus, and of course, Kasi Chris. Great to see you all here. And, before we get started with the show, I want to touch on a topic that we've discussed before. Avi Loeb recently posed a question in Scientific American. Was our universe created in a laboratory? The answer to that seems unknowable for now, but the question alone has mind-boggling implications. Dr. Loeb asked that question because he knows that we will likely possess this power of universal creation ourselves. In fact, baby universes are likely spawned during exotic cosmic events all around our universe. Meaning, just as we're not the only planet, star, or galaxy out there, we're not the only universe. And there's many notions of the multiverse, but this one seems the most real to me. Literal other universes that are born from a parent. If you've ever felt small looking up at the stars at night, this might make you feel microscopic. But it also opens up new possibilities. Is there structure to this physical multiverse? Has anyone figured out how to tunnel across? Were we created by alien scientists? These questions, once reserved for hazy dorm rooms and philosophy groups, are now being considered by the world's most prestigious scientists. It's an amazing time to live in. A time with hope for answering life's big questions. For more on this topic, check out my video, Becoming Gods, on the Rather Be Squidding channel. And also be sure to check out my latest video over there on the Musha Jump Drive, a theoretical, faster-than-light craft that does not rely on the warping of space to achieve science fiction results. But for the next 2 hours, stay tuned here. And some say that Telethon Moo and his sidekick Marty have mastered universal traveling technology already and are sending evidence back to Grant Levok and Akashi Chris. Either way, we're lucky to have him in our universe for at least the next 2 hours. Let's welcome our host of the Unidentified Celebrity Review, Luis Jimenez.
Hey, Rather, how you doing?
Doing well. How about yourself?
Can't complain, man. Had a great weekend. It was pretty relaxing. Got to go down to San Diego again. It was my girlfriend's Lola's birthday. Lola is grandma.
Oh, wow. Congratulations to Lola.
Yeah, she turned 86. She's a great grandmother. It's pretty wild. Pretty wild, man. I look at her, I'm like, woo. I'd be lucky if I made it 86. Yeah. Good Lord, that's a long time. That's a long time, man. And I'm sure for her, it's probably flashed by just like the first 41 years of my life has. Do you feel that way?
Yeah, some say the only time is the present, right? It's hard to comprehend the time past.
Indeed it is. Well, Rather, thank you for that wonderful opening. You ready to get this show started?
Let's do it. Yeah, I'm excited.
Hello, good morning, good evening, good day, good afternoon, and aloha. Welcome back to another episode of the Unidentified Celebrity Review, your home for credible news, reviews, and commentary on everything UAP and UFO. My name's Luis Jimenez. That is my co-host, Rather Be Squidding. Before we get started, of course, let's pay some bills, shall we? Want to say thank you to the sponsor, BlueMarlinChronicles.com, purveyors of the world's finest fishing tackle since 1995. Want to say thank you to DOS Tapes. They provide all of the tunes that you hear on the show. Their Bandcamp link is in the description below. Don't forget to check out our podcast, which is available on iTunes and Spotify right after the show's over, usually about an hour after the show's over. So check it out. Please do us a favor. Also, rate and review the podcast. Goes a very long way. The podcast is growing really, really fast, and that's all because of you guys. So thank you. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, ring the bell. That way you don't miss any of our shows, which will have some time changes here and there. Sometimes we do special editions, extra breaking news shows. So the bell absolutely guarantees you'll never miss one of those shows. And then, of course, check out our links below, which have our Patreon super chats are open. So if you guys have a dying question for our guests, just throw a super chat in there. We will definitely read it out. All right. Well, without further ado, let us bring our guest of the day, which kind of kicks off Crash Retrieval Week. This is his idea. This is a great idea.
This
is
fun. I'm looking forward to this.
Where we get to sort of just focus on crash retrievals. And so James Iandoli does research and fieldwork in investigating UFOs and related UAP and UFO phenomena. He focuses on CE5, consciousness, and more. A direct and inclusive approach to the UFO phenomena. Probably the nicest guy on UFO Twitter. I think a wonderful leading voice in this community, especially when it comes to trying to understand. I don't want to call it the woo, because some people take that offensively, but the fantastical aspect of this phenomenon. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, the harder to understand.
The harder to understand. That's even better. Thank you, Rather Be Squinting. Without further ado, Mr. James Iandoli. How are you, James?
Hey, how are you, man? Thanks for having me on, guys. Really appreciate it.
Absolute pleasure, man. Anytime we can get you on this show, I am a happy man. I'm bummed out that you weren't able to make the phone home.
Yeah,
it was so close. But you had a lot of family stuff going on, and that was cool. We had a good time, but we did miss you. I just wanted to say that. So how you been, man? It's been like a month or two since you've been on. Last time we had was you, me, Papa Dolan, Leslie Kane.
Yeah,
it was a party.
Oh yeah. No, super busy. I launched my new channel on podcast, Meta Perspective, and man, I just between yesterday and today, I already did like two within the last 14 hours. I did two podcasts on there, and I'm launching that, and it's like starting from scratch all over again.
Yeah, man. I'm curious to know. So what's the biggest difference between the Engaging Phenomenon podcast and the Meta Perspectives?
In layman's terms, and so you all understand, Meta Perspective is all woo. In a sense. No, okay. In a sense, it's meta. You can use that term in different ways. There's a psychological term of meta perspective that means kind of to be self-aware. So I'm talking to you, but as I'm talking to you, I'm aware of what you're possibly thinking, how you might be taking what I'm saying, and how I should respond to that. So that's like a meta perspective, but you can transcend that and go as meta as you want. So in a way, like meta perspective is a transcendental perspective in a way. So I'm going to be doing a lot of meditation stuff, mindfulness, spiritual awakening, if I can use that terminology, and things like that. But today I had an awesome guest, Vince Horn, and he's a really big name in like the Dharma or like Buddhist community. He's a Westerner, but he's well known. He was written about in, I think, Wired magazine for his influence in mindfulness and meditation. And we talked UFOs, and he was really cool about it. And he's been tweeting out stuff about the Pentagon, the Skinwalker at the Pentagon book, and he takes the subject seriously, and he understands. And he actually, after we finished our interview, he tweeted out something about like two of the biggest Dharma magazines, Lion's Roar and Tricycle. They're huge Dharma magazines that have big influence in like the meditation world. And he said, listen, I want to write a UAP article for you guys if you're interested. If not, I'm just going to write it on Medium. So it's good to see that kind of the UFO reality kind of trickle out to other communities and have other participation from other communities as well.
Yeah, that's fascinating. Do you get a sense for
awesome.
if they think it's a real phenomenon, or is this kind of more conscious-based realities
So
that they think we're tapping
yeah,
into?
so I mean the people I've spoken to are kind of like in the Western Dharma world. So they have kind of a Western attitude. They understand technology is innovative and stuff. So they I think they kind of see it as a little bit of both. They're actually they have a really cool perspective on it. So I think like, because in I don't want to go too far off on the meta perspective and all the kind of consciousness stuff, but they um in Eastern traditions, they're even the Dalai Lama spoke out on UFOs and possible extraterrestrials or whatever intelligence you want to attribute to the UFO phenomenon. And the Dalai Lama, spoke on it, saying, yeah, there are probably other beings out there in this infinite universe. And so Eastern traditions, they already have a much more vast cosmology than we're willing to accept in Western societies as much. They categorize all these different realms and types of beings called devas, and so they have a whole rich and pretty thousands of years old cosmology that is actually that fits, in my opinion, is compatible with the UFO phenomenon and kind of even metaphysics and paranormal activity like skinwalker stuff.
Yeah, no, that's fascinating. That's always one of the most interesting things that I've had with Buddhism and stuff like that. Not only UFO stuff, but just quantum physics. There's a lot of
Yeah,
tie-ins and a lot of weird relationships there.
yeah, it's really fascinating.
Dude, okay. So I mean, can you, because I love that you're starting a channel, guys, by the way, is it also available on YouTube as well, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so go check out, I've got James's link in the description below. So go click on that and check out his new show, because it's interesting. Yeah, I mean, again, like, you're diving into the woo and you're not afraid to go there, and you also know what you're talking about because you've devoted a lot of your life to the meditation of the mind, to self-improvement, and just your overall presence. It's just very calm, James. You're just like a really calm, and considering you live in New York, like, you don't have,
I know.
like, you're not as tense as most New Yorkers that I know. I mean, I lived there for 8 years, and people always come up to me and they're like, when they meet me, they're like, "You're from New York, aren't you?" I'm like, "Actually, no, I'm from
Yeah.
Miami." And everybody always thinks I'm a New Yorker, but you actually, you kind of go against the grain, and I dig that about you. But you did bring up the Skinwalkers at the Pentagon book. So
Yeah.
I'm curious, because Stephen Greenstreet had made an interesting observation of this book, and his spin on it is like, he says, "I don't care how anyone wants to spin this. Lukatsky is throwing shade at Elizondo." And he had quotes from James Lukatsky that were from the book. And he says, and Lou Elizondo used the name ATIP. Nothing wrong with that. I mean, that's fine. But there was a difference between the two programs. Ours, OSAP, had a $22 million in funding. His ATIP had zero.
Yeah.
Ours looked at military and civilian investigation. His looked at military exclusively, excuse me. And we had, of course, contractor support. He had no contractor support. He did his thing. We did ours. But I could say that we were the only game in town. And he's, I guess, referring to OSAP. What do you feel about these comments?
I don't see it as throwing shade. I think they both have mutual respect for each other. That's my own assumption, based on the different people I've spoken to. And what James Lukatsky is saying is correct in a sense where, OSAP is the program that got the funding, and all that I think was made very clear when Jeremy Corbell released the Skinwalker film, The Hunt for the Skinwalker. He made that pretty clear. Now, and technicalities, technically speaking, ATIP didn't have the funding like OSAP did. Did they didn't get any contractor help. I mean, not officially, right? But there were people helping them that were experts that had, secret clearances and stuff. So they had their own network, right? I don't think when OSAP ended, Hal just said, "All right, Lou, I'll see you later." It's pretty clear to me that all those guys continued to work together, for free, basically, because they want to get down to the truth of the matter. So, again, it's a technicality, and I don't know what Lukaski's intention was for that necessarily, but he's not.
I mean, is it because Lou Elizondo said that that ATIP was the one that got the $22 million in funding?
No, but I mean, before OSAP was revealed, because it wasn't just revealed when ATIP was. ATIP was the first thing that came out in the New York Times article, and New York Times reported it as that. But I don't think Lou was going to go ahead and say, actually, the name of the program that got the funding was OSAP, and yada yada. I don't think he's allowed to disclose that. So,
what were you going to say, rather?
Yeah. Kind of my reading of that statement was that OSAP, Earth versus Uranus, can check me if I got that right, but OSAP was the kind of the X-Files entity that was actually going there and getting, when the people would call MUFON and explain weird paranormal stuff, they'd be like the X-Files investigators who would go there to the civilians and investigate and do a bunch of stuff. ATIP didn't really do that kind of like on the ground reporting. They were more kind of collecting intelligence reports and reports from inside the military community. At least that's per my understanding. So, when Lukaski says we are the only game in town, I think that kind of means, they were the only guys really doing X-Files type on the ground, boots on the ground investigations, which I think is true.
Yeah. Well, I think he's kind of saying they were like the initial sanctioned program with the budget. So they were kind of like the official program that started that initiative, and which later became ATIP. And I don't know if this is true, but something really interesting about OSAP, I believe on his podcast, Ryan Bledsoe, he has a podcast called Bledsoe Said So, and he said that his father, the Christopher Bledsoe case was the first case that was investigated by OSAP. I don't know if that's true, but that's pretty interesting, and I'd like to find out.
And I'm curious what your thoughts on, is, that there's the one thing is there's unidentified things in our sky that our military people are running into and they want to figure out. There's another aspect of, the government exploring these really strange, bizarre things. And it seems a little bit less clear to me that that's actually within the government's scope necessarily. I'm curious to what you think. Is that something that you think we should maybe bring up again and have more of a OSAP type boots on the ground government investigation agency?
I mean, personally, personal biases, hell yeah. I think so. And I think that to some extent there's still actually some of that going on. I mean, I don't think that there's no remote viewing programs right now. I think that there's a current remote viewing program that's still active in some sense and tucked away. Maybe it's a program within a program or a group of people within a program doing something that's not officially part of the program. So, I mean, that kind of falls within that range, right? ESP remote viewing, I don't think it ever stopped. It's funny that they also said in the Skinwalker book that Lou Elizondo had like a little remote viewing story. And, Lou Elizondo had said some months ago, you don't find ATIP, ATIP finds you. And it almost sounds that part of the reason why he was recruited for that program was because of his capabilities or alleged capabilities of, ESP or remote viewing or intuition. What Annie Jacobson wrote the article called Spidey Senses that was talking about people in the field. This is how they found Joe McMoneagle, right? He was in the field in the Army, and he had a knack for guiding people away from danger intuitively. So that's how I believe Joe McMoneagle was recruited, and that's possibly why Lou was recruited for ATIP. I mean, that statement kind of seems to indicate to me.
That's interesting.
What were you gonna say, rather?
Well, yeah, I was gonna, so Lou Elizondo, that little snippet that was included in the book made it seem like he was utilizing remote viewing almost like in the trenches in a real like wartime
Yeah.
activity, which is I've never heard of remote viewing used like that before.
Well, I think it's more of like he's not sitting there remote viewing. That's more their people they're spotting their intuitive capabilities, right? Some people are more intuitive than others in a sense, and then you're getting into the territory of the article I wrote about Dr. Gary Nolan and Kit Green's work, which is actually tied, I would assume, to OSAP based on their cohort and the time period that the studies were being done. But people are identified in the field who have intuition, right? Annie Jacobson wrote a fantastic book called Phenomena. And the whole book is about, the U.S. government psychic programs, Hal Puthoff, Ingo Swann, Pat Price, Kit Green was heavily involved, Russell Targ, all that, Joe McMoneagle. I mean, there's a huge history to that, and it's very closely associated with kind of like the UFO stuff. If you go back to there's an old video and it shows Hal Puthoff and Uri Geller talking about remote viewing, and he draws a little UFO, but it was a kind of known thing, like an open secret, that these remote viewers would be doing their targeted remote viewing, and all of a sudden they'd see a UFO or some beings. So that seemed to happen frequently for whatever reason.
Do you think those remote viewing missions are still happening? Do you still think there's a part of the government that still dabbles in this stuff?
Yeah, but the question is, like, again, is it? I don't know if there's a whole program carved out that says this is the remote viewing program, or there's another program that has some other title, and within that program, they know, kind of like, they don't want to have it on paper, but it's authorized that this is just one small part of what the program is doing.
Right.
I kind of think that's how it would be hidden, but I'm just guessing here. This is speculation.
No, it's fine. I mean, if there's anyone who could speculate really well, I think it would be you, just because you have the knowledge and the vast history and a great context of the really big picture of this whole thing. That's why I always love talking to you. It's why I asked you this question, like, is this throwing shade? And I was like, I wonder what James would have to say on this. So thank you for that perspective. What did you have something to say, rather?
Yeah, I just can see how remote viewing in a combat situation or something like this that Elizondo was doing would be very, very useful if they could pull it off, right?
I remember I would hear stories of like Patton, even in the movie, where where he would just be like standing up in the middle of a fire zone because he knew he wasn't going to get hit. He was destined to be on that battlefield. He was destined to win the war for the American people. Like, he thought he was a god on some levels.
I mean, it really blurs the line between intuition, luck, and the paranormal. Really, like it's
just pure ego.
What's going on.
and then you have the thing of synchronicity. A lot of people like to kind of just overlook that, and I understand. It's a coincidence, but there's just an overwhelming kind of like anecdotal observation of synchronicity as being part of these other kind of capabilities, where people have synchronicities that coincide with kind of intuition or ESP, and it's really interesting. Actually, in a recent podcast, this is Ryan Bledsoe's podcast again. He was talking about Dr. Diana Pasulka, and he said that she said, I forget where it was, that maybe he told her personally that intuition and psychic phenomenon is it's like a phenomenon that people with high intuition it filters them towards truth, which or closer to ultimate reality, where however you want to call it, closer to truth. I thought that was like a fascinating perspective. right? Like it filters them towards truth. Whatever, that's one way to look at it.
Well, I can tell you, man, I synchronicities happen around me all the time. All the time, where it's um at this point I'm like, all right. I look at it as like, okay, I should be here. Like I should have been here to see this. Sometimes I'll even see the situation in my head. Oh, like a deja vu, where you have a moment of deja vu and you're like, man, I have been here. I know this space before.
that's the kind of crazy thing about the Matrix. I love that part.
Yeah.
When there was the deja vu and they're like, that means there's a glitch in the Matrix. They changed something.
Cat, right?
Yeah, I love that. And I can't wait for the new Matrix.
Me
not
too.
to get off topic.
I think it's one of the most underrated trilogies of all time, and I get a lot of heat for that because, obviously I'm a film guy, and people are like, "You like the Matrix?" We'll get into these deep philosophical stuff. I'm like, man, you guys are kind of missing the boat on this flick.
Who's hating on the Matrix? That's a classic.
You wouldn't
right?
believe it. Like so many people hate on it, and then I'm like, dude, and then you add the Animatrix. That little layer of beauty and art onto the film. So I'm just like, dude, this world is awesome. I absolutely love this.
Yeah, and I mean, the Matrix doesn't only have the philosophy, but it also has like the technology, like simulation hypothesis, that kind of stuff. It's like, that's taking a meta perspective. That's kind of like looking at things from a different point of view, which is really cool. Yeah. But one more thing I want to say about the Lukaski comment about Elizondo and the programs, just like maybe it was a month ago or a month and a half ago, Lou Elizondo, he kind of made a statement saying something about like, I forget what the statement was, but it gave me the sense that somebody big was going to be coming forward soon. And now that I think about it, I really think that Lukaski is the guy he was talking about. Because, in a sense, Lukaski is kind of confirming a lot of what Lou was trying to get at. But Lukaski here was a former director of OSAP. He can kind of state it himself personally, whatever he's allowed to disclose.
Okay, well, then I have to ask you, what do you think of the Dino Beavers?
What was that?
Oh, you didn't? Have you read the book?
No, okay,
no worries. All right, because have you finished the book yet?
That better not be a spoiler.
Through now.
I better not read it, and it's going to spoil something.
A spoiler, but correct me if I'm wrong. Rather, but essentially they were in the middle of doing experiments. This was on Skinwalker Ranch, and I don't know if there was a portal. Rather, you say it because you actually read it. But
yeah. So I'm not entirely sure who it was, but there were some investigators out in the field, and there was They claimed they got suddenly afraid and they saw a galloping pig dino beaver creature galloping towards them, and they weren't able to take any pictures or anything like that, but it crossed their path essentially, and they were stunned in astonishment essentially.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there you go with the kind of high strangeness stuff, and we live in a technological society now, so we have an inclination to kind of dismiss a lot of the stuff that is in folklore and stuff. But, Jacques Vallée points to the fact of all this high strangeness that's been reported throughout history. Even if you look in kind of like Western religion, angels and stuff are taken very seriously by these, religions. They're seen as actual beings, not kind of like some make-believe thing that we're having encounters with humans, right? It's like part of almost every belief system that there is an interaction between humans and non-human intelligence. That's like the foundation of like most religions, not all, but a lot of them. So again, high strangeness, the way that people perceive things, it's a big question, right? Because now you're talking about something that we can call phenomenology, and that's kind of like phenomenon, subjective experience. So there's a lot of bizarre things that happen in again, you have Bigfoot. That to some people that sounds ridiculous, but again, there's all these different reports and yeah, maybe some of them are misidentifications, but there's got to be something of it that is true to some extent, right? At least within their perception. So,
Yeah. So
and
there's a
again, you
really
have and then there's the story of some being that comes out of a portal, right? And they're looking right at it. So, yeah, I don't know. I don't know what to make of that. I wasn't there. I didn't see that, but I've personally seen orbs of light within, in the field site around me, and I can try to explain that to somebody, and they're just going to say, find a way in their mind to explain it in a way, well, like maybe there was reflection off something and there was light projected. It's like, no, that's not what happened. That there was a ball of light feet away from me. You know what I mean? And you can't explain that stuff to people and have them take you really seriously. And so I understand it takes a lot of guts to come out and actually say something like that, especially these people that were working on Skinwalker have a reputation. They have a whole career that is kind of pending on their word. So, I have a lot of respect for them telling what they think needs to be told, right? And they were part of an official investigation for the DOD. I don't think they want to have to explain this to people, right? But if they're doing it, I think that there's a reason why. They're not. I don't think they're making up some story about some entity like that, thinking like this is going to get us the money, guys. This is going to get us the big bills to continue the project. I think they're honestly reporting what they had encountered. And Skinwalker, that whole area has hundreds of years of history of the tribe, the Utes. And again, Skinwalker's a shapeshifter, and whether that's an actual physical entity or it's some kind of entity that is interdimensional or can make you see those things. Maybe it wasn't actually there, but they saw it because something made them, right? Even if people want to speculate on psychotronic weapons, right? We know that psychotronic weapons exist and can do pretty insane things, so they were talking back in the 70s about being able to make you think God is having a conversation with you in the 70s. This is, we're talking 40, 50 years later. I don't know. I can't imagine what they can do now.
Yeah. No, it's like, when you look at something, how much of that is actually there versus kind of like a creation of your mind, right? And I think that mind is kind of blurry. And if you see something that is totally out of the normal, your mind could very well perceive that as maybe a dino beaver, right? And yeah, I mean, it's kind of like a Rorschach test almost.
Kind of, right. I mean, again, because there's accounts of like when the Native Americans saw, well, they didn't even see the ship sailing over because they didn't know if something's beyond your ability to perceive, because the brain is working through associations, right, and pattern recognition. If you're encountering something for the first time, your perception of it is going to be, vastly different than if it was something within our normal consensus reality that we're familiar with. So, and that's again, and all these religions and stuff, there's a lot of stories, the Ezekiel's wheel and stuff. I mean, that kind of sounds bizarre. I mean, are they explaining what they actually saw, or was it just a UFO back then? And that's the only way they can describe it, right? People used to see boats in the sky, So again, is that something where they're imagining it? Is it something where that's the actual phenomenon as it is, or it's projecting itself that way to their mind, or they're seeing something that they don't understand and they try to explain it within terms that they can relate to?
Well, I feel my biggest fear is that this book is so wild. I don't know if it helps or hurts the conversation.
Yeah, but it's the truth as for them. So it's like, I'm not a fan of, and again, this is the entire thing for Crash Retrieval Week.
Right.
I don't think we should just be settling for less. And I understand the wisdom of subtlety, of leading from behind, like the Tao Te Ching, and taking the small victories one by one. But at the same time, I don't think we should become complacent or lose sight of the bigger picture. So, again, like say crash retrievals, right? I don't think that's something we should just back up off of and say, oh no, wait, they're gonna give us a partial disclosure. Maybe they're gonna have closed hearings and not tell us the majority of the things, and that's likely what's going to happen if there ever is such a thing. But that's why we need to put these questions out there, because we need more people looking at these phenomena, not less. We need the different fields of people looking at it, right? Maybe we do need psychologists and or whatsoever to become part of the investigation, so they can determine whether this is some kind of psychological phenomenon to some degree, or it's actual physical phenomenon. And in the case we know, like the Nimitz and stuff, that's physical UFO, and some of these other cases. But I don't think we should be sheltering the truth because it's safe, right? Because UFO disclosure was never going to be safe to begin with. So, we've reached greater milestones, and I think that is an indicator that we need to set new milestones. And if you look at the UFO phenomenon, Dr. J. Allen Hynek made the terminology high strangeness because this is the kind of stuff that was happening with UFO encounters. There was, again, psychic phenomenon, and all the high strangeness aspect is a huge part of the conversation. So I don't think that's something we should be backing down from. And I don't want to say it like, oh, we're fighting for this and we're going to take it, or whatever, however you want to frame it. But if it's part of the thing that we're looking at, we need to accept that, and not try to fit it within our frameworks. And that's something Jacques Vallée has been a hero of, I think, in some ways, is not trying to fit the UFO phenomenon into our box of comfort. We're just going to be, we're just going to stay there, right? If we don't push those boundaries, we're going to stay exactly where we are. And we've gotten as far as we have because people have kept pushing those boundaries year after year, decade after decade. And you're talking about, like, we're seeing things unravel now. People work their ass off. Some people sacrifice their life to get us where we are now regarding the UFO problem, as Hynek called it.
Real quick, Haley Massbrook with a $5 super chat. Thank you so much in donation. She says, thanks for all your guys' effort on approaching this very interesting topic. I truly appreciate the donation. It goes a long way, Haley. Appreciate it. And Tina Tomaszewski pushing the Red Panda Koala on YouTube. Definitely check out his channel. Tina, if you could also pull up James's Meta Perspectives channel, and also if we could share that as well in the chat there for James.
I just want to interject and say one thing too, because of course, something that I'm close to, right? Everybody knows me, that I'm involved with CE5 and Contact. If it was up to the UFO community, there would be no CE5, and everything on it would just be, they would just say, listen, just shut up about that stuff.
Right.
But I don't really care, in a sense, because I know it to be true.
Yeah.
So I feel an obligation to share, and again, not in a way where I'm just forcing my ideas on people and saying, you have to believe this. Listen, I'm just going to share it how I see it. And if you don't agree with it, I respect that, but I feel a duty to share that, right? Maybe that's part of why I had the experiences I had.
I guess part of me thinks, and maybe rather you can chime in here on this. Part of me thinks it's like, well, this man, James Lukatsky, obviously he's a well-respected, high-level person within this program, right? Fair to say. He writes a book. Why not do a book tour with it? Why not take interviews? Why not talk to people and push that exact thing that you said, that we can't be comfortable with this topic? We have to push our idea of what acceptable science could possibly be. We have to really start thinking outside of the box and go on CBS, go on 60 Minutes. I mean, he should be able to pull those interviews with the pedigree of researcher that he is.
Yeah.
So like I for you to just drop this book and not take any interviews is very strange to me. And for me, you know, James, my thing is like, well, can I put it on the desk of a senator? And can they take this and you know what I'm saying?
Well, you could put on Harry Reid's desk because
you can put it on,
he wrote the forward.
You're right, but Harry Reid's not a senator anymore, unfortunately. You know, like that's I guess I don't want to say that it's doing harm, but I just don't know if it's forwarding the realm of this conversation, because it's just like dropping this book, boom, like, and part of it is like, why didn't you guys go with a bigger publisher? Why didn't you guys get like an actual marketer and designer to design the cover of this book? Like, make it look good, make it, publicize it, you know, like the whole point of a book is to sell it, and but also see if we can gain some normal thinking into this much bigger perspective, if that makes sense. I mean,
no, I get it. And you know, I wish that I saw James Lukaski on CNN and Fox and everything else. I really wish I did. I can only assume that he did what he did, and him being probably a smart guy for a reason. I don't know if it's talked about in the book, and I don't know if he's stated it publicly, but I mean, people have made it clear that the guy went through hell, and some people have. I'm not going to go there, but from what I understand, he had a very hard time, both with people in the DoD and possibly the phenomenon as well. And maybe, you know, this was his, just like, I'm putting this book out there and I'm washing my hands of this and I'm going to disappear. I don't know. I really don't know. It would be great to see him though. Personally, I'd love to see him go out and do more public. I'm glad that he came out at all. I'd rather him have come out than have not come out, and come out with the book and speak with George Knapp and Colm Kelleher and doing the coast to coast. So I'm glad that happened. You know, I don't know what else to say. I wish I wish I saw him on, you know, I know people don't like Tucker Carlson, but Tucker Carlson gets all the interviews. I wish I saw him on any of those news things, any of them. It would be really great to see. And I'd love to see him on some kind of like 60 Minutes with Lou Elizondo. You know, I'd love to see that.
Or maybe, you know, testify in front of Congress.
Yeah.
That'd be cool too.
Come on the Unidentified Celebrity Review.
I mean, look, you know, doors always open, James. We'd love to have you. Rather, what are you going to say?
Well, yeah, I say that, you know, you take one look at the book cover and you can kind of tell that he's not in it for the marketing. He's not really a media savvy type of guy. And I agree completely with you, James, that it seems like he was dying to kind of give his piece, put out his 2 cents, but I don't get the sense that he actually wants to convince anyone of that this is the truth. He just wants to tell his story and put that out there. He probably feels like OSAP has kind of been swept under the rug, and a lot of the cool stuff that they did wasn't talked about ever. So I think he just wanted to get some stuff out there into the conversation, but I don't get the sense that he's going to be taking a lot of interviews and being a media figure like Lou Elizondo or others.
Yeah. And, you know, Lou has done a great job. I mean, he's still going at it. He's going to be on that Q&A, I think. Is he going on today?
I know he's going to be. I think he's going on Thomas Fessler, but then he's got a Q&A, an Ask Me Anything with Kurt from Theories of Everything, Kurt Jamangle.
Yeah, is that today? It might be today.
I thought Fessler was today, and then
no, Fessler already had. Oh wait, no, maybe you're right.
Yeah, I don't know.
I'm in like 2 days at once.
Yeah, no, it's cool. He does so many interviews, dude. It's crazy to keep up sometimes. But yeah, I don't know, man. I just, again, like, I want this conversation to be talked about at every water cooler and every office meeting and every, you know, locker room or gym or whatever, you know, like And I just wish that there was just more thought in the publication of these things. So that way, I think, I would love to get serious journalists reading this book and actually checking some of these things and seeing if we could FOIA some of these things that are in the book. I'm sure Greenwald's already starting to do it, but I don't know, man. I just every time something like this drops, it feels like, oh, this was only written for the UFO community, or this was only written to get this off my chest, and I don't want to talk to anybody. It's like, what? I mean, I just can't understand going through the process of writing an entire book and going, yep, not going to promote it, not going to talk about it later. That's just, I can't fathom that. For me, that's hard to understand. But as you say, I can, if this is, something that brings a lot of trauma to him, and something that maybe this book was a sort of therapy for him, I can understand that. I guess.
Well, no, I think it's more than therapy. I think he legitimately wanted to share what was going on with OSAP, and for it not to be buried. And even if he was
right, but again, if you don't want it buried, man, talk about it.
Yeah, I can only assume he's doing whatever he is for a reason. I don't know why. I've never spoken to him.
Yeah,
it's a catch-22 too, because they talk about how even talking about hitchhikers would bring the phenomenon on. So, if he really believes all this stuff and is concerned about that stuff, I could see why he doesn't want to go on and talk about it everywhere.
No, I mean, when we talked to TJ Allard, the executive producer from Skinwalker Ranch, he went there for one season to shoot. He got sick for 8 months and he's never been back.
No way. Wow.
Yeah. He got sick for 8 months. The doctors couldn't tell him what was wrong with him. And absolutely just, he was like, I am good with never going back to Skinwalker Ranch.
No way. Yeah.
So I mean, honestly, dude, I am going back and forth on this, because when I hear dino beavers, my eyes roll to the back of my head and I'm like, dude, how dino beavers? Like, how is this possible? What are these guys seeing? And is this a glitch in the Matrix? Is this just some dino beaver pig that lives on another version of Earth? And for 5 seconds, these guys saw dino beaver pig running at them, and then they put it in a book. They actually do studies on it. They actually put money into investigating dino beaver pig. It blows my mind on one end, and then on the other hand, I'm like, God, I'm very trepid. I'm like walking on thin ice here, because I don't want to be a sucker. I don't want somebody to look into this program and then go, these guys just made this shit up. Or they just wanted to get more funding for a program so they could play out in the desert and see if they could find ghosts and shit. Like, I was just reading last night that the great inventor who invented the telephone and the light bulb. Why am I forgetting his name? Thomas Edison would put out an invention. He put out because when he invented the light bulb, the filaments would burn out super quick. And so for 5 years, he told investors, he borrowed money, he told the public, oh, I fixed it. Don't worry about it. I fixed it. And for 5 years, he didn't fix it. He had no solution for the problem. And then on the 5th year, it came to him and he figured it out. And then he rolled out the product. So, really brilliant people lie all the time to delay something that they think is going to work out from a research perspective. So you can see, right, why I'm sort of like,
yeah, I mean, everybody's ultimately going to have.
Hard.
Yeah. Again, absolutely, it absolutely is, because I mean, because
I want to believe levels. This. Let's be clear. If there's a dino beaver pig, I want to see that.
I think that kind of if you want to take a skeptical view, something that might have happened here with OSAP is that they did all these kind of very out there stuff at Skinwalker and other things. And then they investigated the Nimitz encounter, and that encounter, maybe they found there was something really there, and that turned into ATIP, turned into the UAP task force, whereas all these other kind of investigations kind of petered out. We're not really seeing them continue. So if you look at the trajectory where things have gone, it kind of doesn't add a lot of validity to the things that they found at Skinwalker Ranch.
Yeah, I mean, OSAP was eventually killed. They killed the program, and Lou took on ATIP, and I mean, it seems like ATIP had a lot of success with Lou's leadership. So maybe that's something else to consider. But and again, ATIP was primarily, and for several reasons, focused on military encounters. And so again, they had a lot of success doing that.
Right.
So, and I think that's probably because, again, they were looking at Nimitz, which happened in 2004. So the stuff is there, okay, and they were able to get the information on it. So there's probably a lot of other stuff there.
I'm interested to see this stuff, man. John Brusso with a $5 donation. If we assume this is real, isn't Skinwalker a dangerous location? Blue orbs aren't going to hurt someone on live TV. Question mark.
Yeah, thankfully Skinwalker Ranch is not a live program. Otherwise, I'd probably tune in more if it was live. That would be
well. Yeah, I mean, it is kind of I think a lost opportunity that the guys on the ranch like Caleb and Travis and the Dragon, and all these guys are on the ranch all the time. I'm not sure why they're not doing a live stream like this from the ranch for an hour every week. It would go gangbusters. It would absolutely destroy. I don't know, man.
Probably
I don't know.
Too many technical problems would crop up, is my guess.
You think so? Yeah. I don't know. It'd be interesting to see how many live streams. There you go. If anything, that'd be even more of a reason to watch. Hey, you never know what might happen during the live stream. Sometimes it cuts out because of the phenomena. All right. Well, man, we went off on a tangent there. But I guess let's circle back to Crash Retrievals Week, James. Where do you want to start with that? Okay, I guess let's start with, why did you want to highlight this week? What was it about? What gave you the idea? Why did you want to talk about this? Floor is yours.
Yeah. So again, I think we've been getting a lot of good news, right? We've been seeing good things happen as far as slow progress with the UFO phenomenon, and the investigation into it, and that's great. But I think things like, again, the hard questions that are kind of running the line need to be asked. So, there's a genuine concern that they're going to admit that UAPs are real, and they're going to just like bury it there. That's it. That's all that in this case, the American public or the world at large is going to receive. And we're going to get these reports every few months, and there might be some interesting stuff and very slow progress. But if we are to admit that the UAP or the UFO phenomenon is a reality, you have to kind of the public needs to understand what that means, right? That means the UFOs are real. So the entire public has to reframe from that as the starting point, right? Rather than this being some kind of new discovery, or these drones, or these aliens, or what have you. So with the reframing, okay, UFOs are real. That's kind of acknowledged now. Okay, so what about Roswell, right? Those questions should be asked, and I don't want stuff like that to just get buried and marginalized, especially when people like Lou Elizondo have made comments saying that there's something to Roswell, personal belief, not as a DoD employee. So again, if humans are in possession of recovered non-human or alien or UFO technology, that's that's tremendous. And I know it's a difficult issue because you're really talking about things that are classified. But we know people are looking at materials, they're analyzing materials. Jacques Vallée and Gary Nolan, Dr. Gary Nolan, are working on papers, peer-reviewed papers looking at, metamaterials. So, if there's physical evidence of UFO technology, that should be front and center. Yeah, it's great to hear about these, from witnesses and reports. That's very important, incredibly important. And it's played one of the most significant roles in currently what's going on, with Alex Dietrich and David Fravor, Chuck Underwood. But if we already have materials in our possession, scientists need to be asking questions. That should be front and center. That's because you're going beyond speculation at that point of, what is this to what is this?
Right.
Yeah. And I guess, when you're talking about what is this, my big, not concern, I guess, potential problem that I don't want to see is that, we have maybe we have collected material, but it's nothing that we could ever even possibly be able to tell what it is. Or even worse, maybe it's just literally some waste product of the whatever craft, right? So we're studying these weird chunks of metal and trying to find out these crazy properties when it turns out we'll literally never be able to figure it out because there's nothing there. I mean, there is something there, but there's nothing there.
Go for it, James.
Yeah, does that make any sense to you, or do you think?
Yeah, no, it absolutely makes sense. But if it's physical evidence of technology that is not from our civilization, that I think would be a tremendous galvanizing force for the human population. For scientists to get involved, that you get material scientists involved now. And I think that when people realize that, if people find out that that's a reality, that's another aspect of disclosure I think is important. And I think that will bring about innovations.
Before I get to this $10 super chat question from John Music, I wanted to ask you before we get off that real quick. What would be the best crash retrieval story or proof that, again, using my lovely put it on the desk of a senator sort of take, what would be the one you'd point a senator to look at, to pay attention to?
Well, again, I mean, it's like, do they have security clearances that go that high? That's the big problem. And I don't want to harp on this, so I'll just refer to it as, the Wilson Davis notes, and other, I can say, speculations that, these programs, whether they're legacy programs, whether they're SAPs, or unacknowledged special access programs, or just special access programs, they've been cut out of circulation, of overview. That's the problem. So, we know that Dr. Eric Davis briefed some committee in defense agencies that, people within the United States have possession of off-world vehicles. That's what the New York Times quoted. And Christopher Mellon, verified that took place, that meeting took place and that briefing took place. So, I mean, having somebody like that to...
So you might point him in the direction of Eric Davis.
Hell yes.
Yeah. Okay.
But and that's so what I don't understand is apparently there's already been a dialogue started there, right? And we've only seen things progress more. So
it wouldn't shock me if Eric Davis and Christopher Mellon and Lou Elizondo and Sean Cahill, I'm sure to some levels, are working behind the scenes for these last 3-4 years, and that's why we're getting the Senate bill. That's why we're getting the House, the congressional bill. That's why next year Congress or the Senate is going to start getting a report at least once a year on these UAP incursions. So all of those things could definitely, Eric Davis could definitely be a part of those efforts. It's just gonna be interesting to see if these guys, if we ever get this sort of, get like a behind the music episode. You know what I mean?
Well, and but there's also the thing. You're like, okay, so there's different crashes with different materials, and the materials are interesting. Do we have a whole intact craft? Do we have large chunks of a craft? Again, cases that I might find interesting are not necessarily ones that I would put on a senator's desk, because if they're true, the classification levels are not straightforward. So these incidents and programs have been taken out of the loop, and I know people are going to get upset when they hear the name, but Dr. Stephen Greer has covered this a lot, and I think to some degree he was correct in and that these programs are not within the oversight that there should be, and we know this to be true now because of the ATIP story.
Well, not only that, but just the IG investigation that's been launched. I think that's going to have a big piece to do with exactly that, because I think hiding these special access programs within private entities is a really easy way to hide this kind of stuff. Rather, were you going to say something, and then we're going to get to John Music's question? Well, I'm sorry, James.
There's that 2000, I don't know when, but there's a TTSA arts parts kind of object that people are talking about. That's like a supposed metal material. I'm curious whether
with the CRADA agreement.
If that might be what the New York Times is referring to when they're talking about recovered materials, and if so, do you think that is a legitimate piece, or do you think that there's more secret stuff somewhere?
Well, I mean, that's one interesting piece, and but there's Jacques Vallée has like a tremendous collection of these materials going back decades, and there was one piece from the Ubatuba incident in South America where Peter Sturrock, this guy is I don't know if he's still alive or he passed away. If he's alive, he's very old now, but Peter Sturrock was like a really smart dude from Stanford University. Coincidence, I guess. But he looked at that material and did like an extreme analysis and was not able to find where any material like that was manufactured on this earth. So and again, on all of these, like none of the materials are like, oh my God, we don't even know, this doesn't come from this planet at first glance, because a lot of the questions come up when you look at the isotopic ratios. So it might be this chunk of metal that looks funny, and it doesn't necessarily look like anything special, but when they do a very, very close, and I think Hal Putoff in one of the TTSA videos was explaining the 3 or 4 different layers of analysis that you have to do, that they find very interesting properties that are there seemingly by design. So there's actually a lot of these different materials. Another set of materials that are really interesting come from the plains of San Agustin, and that was a crash that happened allegedly a few days before Roswell, and it's not talked about much. There were several surveys there, and the UFO researchers used to go on digs there in the 90s, and then again in the 2000s, and I believe starting in 2011 and 2012, there's a gentleman named Art Campbell, and he wrote a book on these materials. And it's a nice book. It's not too long, but it goes over the whole case of the crash in San Agustin, New Mexico, and these materials. And it's actually funny because one of the materials is like a honeycomb material, And Ryan Bledsoe in one of his tweets was like, "Oh, look, this is one of the materials that they showed. They showed me when they came over to his house or whatever. Maybe it was the guy Tyler, or yeah, I think it was the guy Tyler from American Cosmic. Shows him this metal, and he touched it, and he got this electrical sensation, and allegedly it was from this crash material. I don't know if it's the same one, but there's a lot of these different kinds of materials, and some of them are supposed to be pretty interesting.
Well, I'll meld this with materials as well. This question from John Music: if the public knew the real truth about places like the Uintah Basin, there might be mass panic, and there might not be any food or medicine left at the stores for a long time. What are your thoughts on that?
Possibly, it could be a possibility that they announce it on the news, and then people are asking about something that is just dumb the next day. I mean, I would have thought that ATIP was like the huge shit, right? The big deal. And it's like, yeah, it's like people are just going about their lives like nothing, so I don't, to what extent that the U.S. government, in our case, because we're in the United States, make some kind of announcement. I don't think they're going to make an announcement that's going to cause panic intentionally. So that's probably part of why what we're seeing isn't like they're saying, "Oh, UAPs are aliens and they're here" on like the headlines.
Right.
I think that they're going to kind of filter what they're communicating, and I still think that they don't even know enough to confirm anything, at least that, say, for Skinwalker, right? I don't think they even know what's going on there.
Jazz Shaw, $20 super chat, says, look, Jazz Shaw is so nuts and bolts. He says, look, I'm somebody who's seen the craft, but this crash retrieval stuff without evidence still makes everyone look crazy. But you say there is evidence. I mean, you say we do have crash material. So were you pulling something up? Sorry there, rather.
Well, so this is some, presumably some evidence, actually. This is from a 1940s, the Black Vault, a 1940s document that, if you look at the top here, says flying saucer from Denmark. And it has these pictures of recovered, presumably, debris from a flying saucer. And if you,
how long is that, rather? Look, it's got a ruler there. How big is that? That looks like from the side view, huh?
Yeah,
6 inches.
So 6 inches or so. And the killer for this is that so this happened in 1940s. John Greenwald released this in the 90s or the early 2000s, I believe.
Yeah.
In the 80s, another guy, independent of all this, was driving around and he saw a light in the sky and he saw something, crazy drop from it. He went and recovered an object, and then later on he realized, hey, this looks almost identical to this CIA photo from the 1940s. So, to my mind, this is the best evidence we have of there.
Is that a CIA document? Because it says CIC document.
CIC, I guess, yeah, CIC. I'm not.
What is the CIC?
Sure who the CIC is.
Huh.
It's from the Black Vault, so
No. It's a legit photo and document, that's for sure. But yeah, I mean, what do you say to that when you hear that, James?
I completely understand it. I mean, and it's something that I have to question myself, because I've never seen a crash UFO, all right? But it's convincing enough to me. It's compelling enough between the witnesses and the stories, where I think it's and some, again, so when you have somebody like Dr. Eric Davis making these claims, among other people who are not going to go public and say things like that, it's I think that we should ask those questions, and something's there, right? Was it a satellite that crashed or something? Who knows, right? Or foreign technology, possibly. But based on the information that's out there, and given that, there's some that's just doesn't make the cut, I guess you can say. But there's enough interesting stuff there where I think that there's something going on with it. And if it's even a possibility, I think that should be a priority. All right, because that solves the question of whether it's from here or it's our technology or not. The the Philip Corso story, and it's really interesting. And in one interview, Eric Davis said that he did a background check and he tried to get to the bottom of that, and he found out some things that checked out about Phil Corso's story. So I do think that Roswell is one of the most interesting cases. And there were a lot of witnesses. Most of them have passed away now, but back when the investigations were going on in the late 70s with, I know Bill Moore was involved, but Bill Moore, Stanton Friedman. I mean, there's a lot of really interesting things there. Again, you got Jesse Marcel and Jesse Marcel Jr. If there was this mogul or weather balloon crash, one of the top guys from that base misidentifying that, seems absurd to me, that to where they had weather balloons in that area regularly, and the idea that he couldn't identify that and it was sent to a foreign technology division, I don't think so. Again, I think there's a lot of interesting stuff when it comes to Roswell, and that's just one case.
And do you think that we'll ever actually get to the bottom of what happened to Roswell now, 70 years later, when there's rumors of, if there is anything, it's probably in private aerospace companies and the government doesn't maybe even know what's going on anymore?
I mean, I think at that point that they did kind of know. I don't, this is where, I mean, I don't even know exactly how that operates. Because I would think that, again, if you have somebody like Wilson, right, he couldn't get access to, but there was a bigot list and there were people allegedly in chain of command in the know, but it was a very small amount of people. But that's, the whole mechanism of how that operates is a whole nother issue. So it's not even just about, we're going to release this information, Roswell, but then the people who did what they did to maintain the secrecy, are those people going to be granted amnesty? Those kind of things. And again, if you're talking about all the cases back then, most of those people have probably passed away by now. And there's newer people who took those, who are in charge of those programs, or, who knows? There's a story that, Bob Lazar said it, but it came out, Eric Davis said it too, but he doesn't agree with Bob Lazar, that, every, 7 or 8 years, they look at the material again, and, if they don't make any progress, it gets shut down for another 10 years or so, and it's stored somewhere. I think, I mean, I would hope that if say Roswell was real and it was, non-human technology, that would be disclosed. But again, that's like that's the big disclosure, that's levels above what we're seeing now. That's like the big one, that I think that settles everything, and that's a really jarring subject, probably.
Lou, I think you're muted there.
Sorry about that. I was curious to know if you've heard of this one, Skyhawk 88 with a $20 super chat question. Thank you so much for the donation. He says, not a hoax anymore. The Aztec UFO incident by Scott and Suzanne Ramsey, a result of 28 years of research, a must read. I did a book review on it in 2019 on Richard Dolan's members site. Interview the Ramseys, just a thought.
That where did that come? That was that. I feel like that was in a documentary recently.
About the Aztec UFO incident?
Yeah.
That's the first time I've heard of it.
No, I think I don't want to say. Was it in that the Ross Coulthard documentary? I'm not sure. It came up recently.
The one that just came out?
The one that was in Australia.
Yeah.
I don't know if it was in that one or if it was in one of those new Netflix shows.
I don't think the Ross Coulthard went to South America in that special.
I don't know. So
I know he spoke to some farmers in Australia at the end of that.
Yeah, no, then maybe it was in one of those Netflix that 7-part series or something. But I saw it in a recent documentary too, that they were on some program.
Yeah.
And they were talking about it. Yeah, that's another. I mean, the crazy thing is that, yeah, people say, like, how are these things crashing?
Right.
You know, and
well, that's my thing. Like, how is it that you have this intelligence that's able to traverse these vast star systems in whatever way they do it, and then they get here and they crash? It's like, it doesn't seem like a protocol that would be wise for an intelligence to do if they knew that they were sending these probes or craft with, say, AI or entities of some kind, and they're prone to crashing. That could be dangerous if you accidentally send one of these things to a popularized Earth, say, and one of these things crashes into New York City. That's going to be a problem for that intelligence, possibly. Depending, because if we have the same kind of intelligence, but we weren't aware of them, now they might have just started a war.
Yeah. And then there's the thing about an American cosmic, they call the area the gifting field.
Mm-hmm.
Is this intentionally put there?
I saw somebody say that today, sort of this gift as like, here you go, Earth.
Well, and then and then there's also kind of like the anti of that, which I think Tom DeLonge has alluded to, where, they're giving different countries different technologies and kind of like a survival of the fittest kind of thing, like they're seeding technology to different areas and causing conflict. I don't know about that.
Or they're just randomly pooping on us, right? Checking their waste on us.
There was
you and this alien poop, rather.
There was a speculation.
No, I'm just kidding. It does.
Yeah. Well, no, because a lot of this was going on in the 40s. The mid, again, I don't know if we're going to count the Trinity. Jacques Vallée's and Paola Harris's new book Trinity, which talks about the best kept secret, which is the 1945 UFO crash, allegedly right by when we detonated the first atomic weapon for testing. I'm surprised kind of that Vallée went there, because he states in the book, he's been criticized for never kind of really publicly dealing with the crash retrieval subject, and that those criticisms were correct. So, he put his name on this, which is pretty interesting. But there's a strong connection between, again, these UFO crashes and the UFOs and nukes. And we have Robert Sal's that event is going to be tomorrow.
Week. Yeah,
that's going to be a huge event. But there's a connection too, because there's speculations that the UFO crashes and the UFOs were allegedly going in that area a lot, possibly to investigate our atomic and nuclear capabilities. And one rumor was that I forget where this came out. I know Dr. Greer's spoken about it, and he also refers to the FBI memo dealing with this, that something like, they were, again, as far as we can tell, looking at our nuclear capabilities and our atomic capabilities, and they were in that area. And because at the time that was the most like classified place on Earth, basically, because we were developing the most powerful weapon in history, there was new and sophisticated radars, and that those radars somehow interfered with the UFO's mechanism of operation. That is something that comes up. I don't see that as impossible either, especially because, all the talk about, tracking and possibly trying to down UFOs with frequency. Those are like, you're talking about advanced weaponry, frequency weapons. So again, that's one story. Obviously, we can't tell if it's true. Is that, at Roswell there were these two to three different UFOs, and when they were not moving fast, when they were coming down slow, and the radar interfered with them, the two crafts actually crashed with each other, and two of them landed.
Hey, interesting. Something that's kind of always puzzled me is that, if you, whatever the cause of these artifacts coming to us, whether it's, crashing, seeding tech, or pooping on us, it seems kind of it seems kind of ridiculous to think that America would be the only one that would be able to recover these and find these and study them. But at least personally, I haven't heard any other rumors of other countries, having artifacts like this. Have you? Or?
Yeah, there's a Germany. There's one from Germany. I think it was in the 30s or 40s, and there was also one in Russia. There was a crash, alleged UFO crash in Russia. I think more than one, actually. And again, Dr. Eric Davis, to me, that was a mind-blowing interview he did with Alejandro Rojas on Open Minds. But in that interview, he's saying that like all the major world powers have at least pieces of this tech, and that, that was one of the concerns of OSAP and ATIP, and especially ATIP, was that other countries possibly have this technology and are possibly developing it, to an extent beyond us, or the possibility does. Like if they have some of this tech, the United States would be concerned that they can develop any of it, right? If they cracked just one part, one part of the technology, that would be, worrisome to everybody. If somebody has alien technology on Earth, I think all the other countries should be concerned, and maybe that's part of the national security implications. I don't know.
Yes, that's interesting. I don't know if you've seen the movie Arrival, but then a big part of that is that the aliens see different countries, and there's a big debate whether it's the countries are trying to figure out the tech to attack each other, or if it's something to force cooperation to get humanity united. So interesting thought.
I love that movie. I think it was a really good movie. They deal with a lot of non-conventional subjects. I mean, I think that they really got to something in that. I thought that was a great film.
Man, I thought it was a really great idea of how to achieve world peace.
Yeah.
Because if you open up the technological playbook of, say, the United States Navy, and you say to China and North Korea, here you go. Here's all of our plans. Here's how we build them. Here's what we do. We'll even show you how to do it. But go for it. That would be terrifying to try and do, but it seems to me like a great idea, because they would be like, okay, thank you, first of all. Maybe that helps them from an economical perspective, like all of those technologies and all of those things that they can apply in jobs that they can create, and maybe make a cleaner infrastructure. There's a whole bunch of positive implications that, say, China would take from that, or a Russia even. And it also wins you so much good faith, because now you guys are on even playing fields. Now we're not better than you. Now we're equals. And so let's go into the future as equals, as equal voices. I think if you pitch that idea to a general or a senator, they'll look at you like they'll even look at you like you're crazier if you bring them an abduction story, I think. But I thought that's a wonderful idea, to open a dialogue of world peace. Hey, Iran, you're so hell-bent on building a nuclear bomb. Here you go. Here's the plans and how to do it. But the second we find out that you're using this for nefarious reasons, you're done. You're done. But I'm curious to know how it would work, I don't know.
Well, that's the thing, right? It's curiosity, but you're,
Right.
At that point, we're at the point of no return. And
Right.
maybe that's, again, one of the other national security implications is like, we don't know what to do. Like, even if we had the technology, right? What could you do with that?
God, would it be so frustrating if actually, all the pieces for understanding this were on Earth, but just in different countries, and
Yeah,
right.
we're sitting here looking at it, but the answer is over there in Russia? Yeah.
Can you imagine?
Yeah.
Dude, that would be wild. But here's the thing that I kind of find either a missed opportunity or part of the reason that maybe we just have what we think of this is wrong. And, if the United States has a piece, or even say, let's just be kind and say multiple pieces, maybe up to 10 pieces of a craft, then that means Russia probably has more because their landmass is 4 times the size, 5 times the size of the United States. Same thing with China, Australia. Well, Australia's not bigger than the United States, but it's close. I think it's a quarter of the size. All these, India, like all of these massive, countries with Africa. How many crash landings have there been in Africa?
There's actually a story about that where it's a document in a book, and there was talk about there actually was a crash in Africa, but
there has to have been. There has to have
well,
been
no, and the U.S. government went to go retrieve it.
Yeah,
I forget what book that was in, but I don't know if it was a Timothy Good book or Stephen Greer's first book.
Yeah.
But
I feel like there's like a lost opportunity here. Because, if I'm the United States and I've got hold of this information, why wouldn't I try to beat everybody else to the punch on revealing it? Because I think the first country that comes out publicly and shows people pieces of a craft and starts talking about it as a reality is going to be the go-to country anytime information is seeked out on this. So if that's China, can you imagine?
Yeah,
People going to the Chinese government or Chinese news to get their news and information on UFO crash retrievals and the possibility of alien life. That would be just a massive, I think, almost a national security threat in a way.
I get if they do, though, if say the Chinese government came out or the American government came out and said, hey, here's this weird looking chunk of metal that we think came from a UFO, but there's nothing to show for it. It doesn't do anything. Do you think that would have the same effect, or do you think we'd have to have figured something out to kind of get the public's imagination going?
No, I don't think you have to have any of it figured out. As long as it's it's evident that it's not ours. I think every scientist's dream, especially the younger scientists.
I can just see it vividly in my brain. Just if we did have a piece, this sort of the rounds that piece would make from, let's say, if the government had it. If I was the government, I'd go to MIT, I'd go to Caltech, I'd go to Harvard, I'd go to, Stanford, UCLA, whatever other science tech schools, any, and I would have them research, look at it, come to conclusions, write a paper, and then make an announcement. I think that would be, hey, we've got pieces of metal that we didn't make that are either A, from another civilization far, far away, or B, from a technically advanced civilization that was here thousands and thousands and millions possibly of years ago. that actually had some pretty wild, even in maybe in some cases more advanced technology than we have today. That's, dude, if that doesn't fuel curiosity in science, I don't know what would. I don't think, I agree with James. I don't think it would need to work. Do you rather? What do you think?
I think that there'd have to be something that you could look at the metal and tie it to a UFO. I think that there would be a lot of disbelief if someone, came out and even like Bob.
But it wouldn't be someone. Let's say if it was an announcement out of the White House or the DOD with
if they have
research papers,
research
papers written.
That would be huge.
That would be huge. That would be
I think
huge.
There's a possibility that they have these artifacts and that the researchers aren't going to be able to tell you that this is from a UFO just by looking at it. It might be more complex than that.
Well, you know, if crash retrievals are true and real, especially like the big ones like Roswell, if that whole story is real, there's possible bodies, entities, or even, again, some people speculate that they're biological kind of like machines in a sense. They're people have called them programmed life forms, but they could be, not like the actual entities themselves per se, but they're, created.
I love the idea of AI. It makes the most sense. If it was, let's just for a second say maybe it does take them a really long time to get from point A to point B. Maybe it's not light speed, maybe it's not warp travel, maybe it's not any of that stuff. Maybe it does take them 4 to 10 light years to get here. AI makes perfect sense. You don't need to feed it, doesn't need to sleep, it can constantly navigate itself. Depending on what the renewable energy is, it could, it's like a battery that never dies. And they can send it anywhere. And it might take them 8 or 20 light years to get an answer or a report on what they found. But maybe for that civilization, 40 light years is nothing.
But there's also the kind of idea for that I mean, whatever the phenomenon is they're here and they've been here and they are so frequent. It doesn't seem like, if they have some kind of regular operation or observation here, it seems. Again, if we're to take the report seriously of Ryan Graves and others, even if it's just their technology, even if they are kind of like UAP drones that are just observing, there's some kind of frequent presence. But the idea of AI and quantum computing and nanotechnology and all that stuff is just mind blowing. The possibilities, and that even Dr. Michio Kaku talked about civilizations just sending out probes like everywhere in the universe, and they might not even be around anymore.
We talked about those. They're called von Neumann machines, right?
Yeah, von Neumann probes. Yeah.
I love that idea too, and I just the idea that maybe they were already here, and maybe they even seeded life and just split, just split. And who knows? Maybe it takes us another million years before we're actually invited or contacted by the people who sent the probe, if they even are people. Dude, that's just, I love thinking about that stuff, man. That's just wild. It's wild to think about, but it's, with this crash retrievals week, the one thing that John Greenwald says is that he's not 100% sure one way or the other, but the one thing he is sure of is that there's been a cover-up. There's been a cover-up of this information. There's been a hiding. There's been obfuscation. There's been lying. Straight up lying. There's been who knows, maybe even some cases people have died because of this information. We don't know that, but if you venture to say that there is a cover-up and there is something this deep and that is this complex and life-changing, I could see how someone might fall a window or something on accident.
James Forrestal, and you got, if you want to count Paul Benowitz, whether directly.
That's true. I guess you can be. I would count Paul Benowitz as so. I mean, he was
and
driven
then,
into an insane asylum.
yeah, and James McDonald, right? That guy was like a hero for the early disclosure movement, and his life was partially ruined because of this. And
I was just gonna say, do you get the sense that this, the last couple of years of UFO disclosure and stuff like that is real disclosure trying to get us to the truth, or do you get a sense that it might be trying to control those lies and get it out in a contained manner? We're not talking about, they talked about materials in the first New York Times article, but that's kind of been dropped from the whole, public sphere.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's, competing groups, right? I think that there's people that genuinely want this out. And like, again, Lou Elizondo, he's been hinting at this. He hasn't been saying, oh, well, no, I don't know anything about it, and maybe that's just speculation. I mean, he's been indicating that that's a direction that people should be looking in and asking questions on. So I think that there are people that genuinely want like true disclosure, that they want the information out on the UFO reality, not in a kind of way that's deceptive. But I think that they realize, even with everything that they're doing, at the end of the day, when there is some kind of actual disclosure, there's going to have some kind of compromise. I think that we're going to eventually come to that line somewhere. Maybe we're already there, and that's a concern. There's people that for sure they do not want this out at all, and they'll go through whatever hoops that they have to go to keep it concealed. So there's competing agendas. Will it ultimately lead to a partial disclosure and it's going to dead stop there? Possibly. I mean, that's a possibility. And that's why I think crash retrievals are so important. That should be highlighted, because that just puts an end to the speculation.
This is a good question, and I think I have a pretty decent answer for this question. Here's what's weird. The USA does crash retrievals in other places like Brazil. Why is the United States of America retrieving stuff in Brazil? Who gives us the right? The Brazilian government gives us the right. They give us permission. We go in there. We probably give them money. I mean, we know in Argentina that we set a Project Blue Book within their Air Force, and we gave them the money to set up that program, just as long as they report the findings of that program back to us. So yeah, that happens all the time. I did hear about in Mexico. That the Mexican government or armed forces got into a little bit of a tussle with the American forces, because the American forces did not have permission to be there, and they wanted to take the object in their possession, and I think eventually won that argument. I don't know. It was just a rumor. Have you heard of that?
That's about what I heard.
Yeah,
I heard just about the same. Yeah.
Now, if that's true, I would bet there's nobody on the U.S. side of things that would talk. But if you could find the Mexican soldiers,
I wish. Yeah.
Oh man, I don't think they'd have any issues talking about that whatsoever. I could be wrong.
It's kind of the thing where, like, you can have the soldiers come out and say it was a flying saucer, there were alien bodies, and so on, and then it comes out, oh no, it was actually, those were test dummies, and it was a test U.S. flight, and that's why we wanted it. And it's going to end up in one of those scenarios. It's almost like inevitable, right?
Yeah,
that there's always going to be the two sides. You had that guy, Sergeant Clifford Stone, right? He was part of the Disclosure Project. He talked about that. He said that he was on the crash retrieval team, and again, that's a hard one to kind of swallow because he tells such a tall tale, and it's like I don't know. I mean, even if 1% of that was true, or even just one of the stories that he was telling was true, that would be incredible. And I met Cliff Stone back maybe 2013, 2014, and the guy was genuinely a nice guy. But again, it's such an unbelievable story that I don't know what to make of it.
Right.
But he ended up having some kind of genuine documents that were not, I think, available to the public before. And he did have some insight into actual recovery of some kind of objects. I can't say that they were UFOs, but he spoke about different programs that were tasked with recovery, space debris, satellites. And he said that they used those programs as kind of like a cover for the UFOs.
Earth vs. Uranus says Cliff Stone was the name of my drug dealer in college.
That could also be true. I don't know.
Oh my god!
No, but and actually, he actually just passed away recently. So God bless the guy.
Yeah.
Super nice dude. Again, it's one of those things, just like what was that guy's name? Oh, I can't remember now. He was another guy. He was like a pretty high-ranking NATO officer, and he tells all these stories about UFOs and it's again, it's another tall tale. I'm forgetting the guy's name right now, but that's kind of why we need disclosure in a sense, because to put some of the stuff to rest, the stuff that is false or
was
irrelevant.
It Bob Dean?
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you, Justin S, for that. Appreciate it. Yeah, man, it's like here's the issue too, is that we've also got people who apparently have had high credentials within the military who say they've been to off-world planets like Mars and have been in the Space Marines and were off world for 7 years and had their memories erased as children and all sorts of crazy stuff, man. It's like, it's just tough to,
Yeah. Yeah.
What do you got?
I was going to say a lot of that. I mean, that's so far out there, man. I don't know about that.
I know, but like, who are we to say? Well, I don't know about
exactly.
that.
Yeah.
Because it's, I mean, here we are. We're talking about, but I mean, look, man, I have a friend of mine who's a really good friend out here in LA who is really, really, really into this secret space program and bases on Mars and kids being indoctrinated into this military system. And I'm telling him, I'm like, dude, where's the budget? Where's the paper receipts? Like, to conduct a mission of that size, you would need a world economy. Forget about a $3 billion budget per year. This would well exceed, or trillion, a $3 trillion budget per year. A space program of that magnitude going back and forth to Mars would be trillions and trillions.
Well, I think the technology would be more out there than the budget, right? Like if the technology
the technology would have, first it means that the technology was found and or created and then duplicated, reverse engineered, and then implemented into thousands of craft, because if we've got bases on Mars, again, like this goes back to the bases on Moon. Like if these things are true, that means that there's a construction team. There are people taking cement and supplies and water and food and also you would have to have spacesuits for all of these people.
Yeah, the logistics of
it are just insane, and it would add up to a number that I'm telling you would be bigger than the annual budget for the country to run.
Well, some of the kind of craziest thing about all that, the secret space program stuff, and I'm not a subscriber to most of it, But the weird kind of thing about that was the Gary McKinnon thing. And I don't even know what to make of that, right? But I do, if I had to speculate or guess, I do believe that we have some kind of classified space program, right? Some kind of, that.
Well, Jane and I were talking about this the other day, and it's this, like, I believe that, yes, we definitely have vehicles that can travel in space with, say, 2 pilots and, circumnavigate the world in less than 20 minutes. I believe those craft do exist.
Yeah.
Now, do I think those craft are going to the moon? No. Like, I don't believe that. Possible, I suppose, but again, like, it would be such a massive budget. It would be so difficult to hide something like that and do it for a super long time without anybody knowing about it. It would be. I would need a lot of proof to believe it. A lot.
Yeah, and I mean, I sometimes I wonder if part of the reason that there's all this secret space stuff out there is to obfuscate or cover any kind of actual truth there is to any of it.
Right. What are you gonna say, rather?
But I think that I feel like we could find the budget if the government had something that they really wanted to do. I think they could find the budget and do it. But I think that you make a good point, and I think even more than the budget, it's the people that would have to be involved. Right. All the different people that have to be keeping this secret.
It'd be tens of thousands of people. Tens of thousands. If you're on the level of building bases on other celestial bodies, you would need tens of thousands of hands, not only in the design and on the ground movement stuff, but you would need thousands going there and thousands coming back. You would have to have a shuttle system. Like, it would just be a logistical.
You'd think that some moon construction worker would have some slips.
Somebody would have slipped. There'd be unions would have to be formed. You know what I mean? Like, things like that. Like, just like, I find
it's a one-way trip.
Yeah, it's a one-way trip in a way. It really is. Red Panda Koala with a $4.99 donation. Thank you so damn much, man. Appreciate it. By the way, if you guys haven't seen this guy's channel, he was on the show a couple weeks ago. Highly recommend Red Panda Koala. What an amazing YouTube channel. If anyone's looking for a fun movie to watch, the HBO Roswell movie from the 90s had Don Schmidt as an active advisor.
Yeah,
interesting.
So yeah, Don Schmidt, he's like an expert on the Roswell.
I don't remember an HBO Roswell movie.
I think I know what I'm doing tonight.
Yeah, seriously, because I've got HBO Max, so I'm curious to know if it's
so do I.
There.
The only reason I'm actually
TV series.
Yeah, I know there was a TV series, but I never heard of a movie.
Yeah, I don't know if it's a movie.
Well, I mean, dude, if there's one guy that I know's got his facts right. Red Panda Koala. This dude is amazing. But yeah, I've never heard. Rather, can you IMDb that and see if that's something that's available to watch somewhere?
Yeah.
Because I would love to check that out.
Yeah.
That just sounds like fun. A 90s movie, especially because I remember the 90s. There was a Showtime movie about. It was about Roswell. Maybe he meant Showtime.
I think he's right.
Was it HBO? I thought it was Showtime, but it was called Hangar 18, I think.
Yeah, that sounds familiar.
That sounds familiar, right? That's apparently where they kept the Roswell crash debris, was in Hangar 18. And yeah, it had that guy that's in all those David Finch movies. I'm forgetting the name of the actor. But that's interesting, dude. Yeah, I'm curious to know where we could find that. If you could DM me the link, Red Panda, that would be killer too. Because I'd like to check that out. Well, okay, so let's see here. What could we talk about? Now, Hangar 18 was great. That was actually a pretty cool movie. So I guess where do you want to end this discussion, James? I mean, you started Crash Retrieval Week, so what do you hope to come out of it?
Public awareness. You know, it would be awesome if if there was like a big phone home thing on the crash retrievals. But again, I don't know if that's too much too soon, right?
No, I don't
That's
think so. I don't think so. I mean, I think that's something that we could talk. I mean, look, I love the idea of a crash retrieval week. I don't know what the format of the next big phone home is going to be. If we're going to do 3 days like we did last time, that was fun, but God, that was a lot of work, a lot of
yeah,
work.
right.
Um,
Yeah,
and you know, if this was something that had a sponsor, I could sort of validate all that work because I can say, hey guys, look, we've got a sponsor, we're getting paid for it, let's do it.
call it Lockheed.
Yeah,
Yeah,
call
well,
up Lockheed, right?
how do you what do you think the like the main message of something like that would be? Like, would it just
Right.
be call your Congress and try to, say, give us the artifacts, or would you want to tie down into a specific thing like Roswell or
Well, I
some
think a
specific
history
thing?
lesson on it a little bit would be valuable. That's for sure. You know,
Yeah,
like the day could be
Certainly.
used as like a history lesson. Like, hey, these are the top 5 crash retrieval stories, either in the United States, outside the United States, why they're important, why we need to pay attention to them, why they need to be highlighted and talked about. I think it's valuable. I think it's valuable because,
yeah,
you know, if this phenomenon is real, we've talked about this before when it comes to the experiencer aspect, and we're trying to figure out how to have that experiencer's conversation, because a lot of it is very difficult. If you've never had a close encounter of the 4th or 5th kind, it's very difficult to imagine the terror, the pain, the trauma, the excitement, the curiosity of the person who actually experienced it. It's difficult sometimes as the listener to just shut up and listen.
yeah,
But if this phenomenon is true, we're going to have that conversation at some point. We're going to have the conversation. So might as well start it now. And I think it's sort of the same thing with crash retrievals
yeah,
is if UAP is real, then that means that there's a possibility UAP have crashed. And if they have crashed, have we collected those materials? It seems like yes. I know Lou Elizondo sort of leans to the yes end of things. We've had Eric Davis in a briefing to Congress say that we have these materials that have not been made on Earth.
and this is where to find them.
And
Yeah,
this is where to find them. And then, but then the next step is, okay, well, if the materials are real, if there is a there, if there is an intelligence beyond human intelligence that created these materials, then the next step would be, well, who was piloting it? Who sent it? Why were they here? Do we have those bodies? If so, does that confirm alien abductions? Does that confirm testing on cattle's and does that explain cattle mutilations and all of these horrific PTSD trauma filled experiences, all of these sightings, all of these, that gentleman from Rendlesham who had his medical records stymied by the
John
government.
Burroughs.
John
Yeah,
Burroughs, like, I mean, do they have recourse? Can they sue the government?
yeah,
Or is it going to be one of these things where it's like, like remember Ross Coulthard was talking to us about the apartheid in Africa and how they came they had a trial, and in this trial it was people confessed their crimes, and a lot of these people were war-torn countries and people that were forced to be soldiers and forced to do horrific things and eventually got used to doing horrific things, but there wasn't a way to reconcile that with families. So they came out and they just basically everybody confessed to what they did. And that was the start of the healing for all of these communities. And it's sort of, would they have to do the same thing here with this, where it's like, look, sorry, but for the last 60, 70 plus years, these guys have been in charge. These guys have been hiding it. These guys have been lying to you. We just kind of got here. We are finding this information, and we know that hiding this is not healthy for public discourse. It's not healthy for this conversation. It's not healthy for science. It's not healthy for society. Like, we want to start bringing this to the table, but we can't be held responsible for this. Like, this is not our fault. Like, what do you think is going to be the solution here? If all of these things are true, if A, B, and C are true, like how do we move forward as a society? How do we have this conversation?
That's a tough one. And again, you need more people involved is the bottom line. If there's an acknowledgement, even if they want to keep the technology classified, I mean, I can understand that. I'm not expecting them to just hand over anti-gravity technology, but if it's acknowledged and you can have people at universities get classifications and go to work on it, rather than kind of like the story, whether true or not, what that Bob Lazar talks about, where, they have the technology and they got such a small group of people there that they can never make any headway with it. It seems like that's like going to be a continual process unless they do eventually open it up. And maybe I think people like Lou Elizondo realize that, they're kind of like in a box and there's only one way out, and it's going to have to happen eventually. And it's like, how long is this going to go on for? And the longer it goes on, the more damage is done.
Yeah.
So I think that.
The truth will set them free, right?
Yeah, the truth will set them free. You would figure.
I hope so, right?
Yeah, I would hope so. What you what? Sorry, I cut you off again.
No, I was like, I can understand if they have some kind of amnesty on people in these programs. I mean, if you had another kind of like Lou Elizondo like level of person that came from one of these programs and said, I'm so-and-so and I worked on a program. Again, you had Nat Kobitz, but I wish that Ross Coulthart was able to get him on video or, something like that, talking about what he did in plain sight about being, read into some of those programs.
Right.
I mean, that's
Artisan Tony with a $5 donation says we should be developing post-disclosure strategy, not debating whether they exist or not. Is this the Bunker TV or what? No, it's not the Bunker TV, Artisan Tony, but we have to have these conversations, man. Again, and I know Artisan, I don't know him, but I know he's had an experience, just like I've had an experience, just like James has had an experience. And so for us, there's not really a question on whether there's a there or if they exist or if something is here. I think we've pretty much been convinced because we've seen it with our eyes. We've experienced it on some levels. I know for James and for Artisan on a much closer level than I've experienced it. So having this conversation, I know for some people is almost archaic or doesn't make any sense, but we have to introduce the majority of the people who are not into this conversation. We have to ease them into this somehow. And these are the kind of conversations that new people to this topic are going to appreciate because they're not going to get lost in it. I think.
Yeah.
I don't know.
And they're going to see the different.
Go ahead, James.
No, I was just going to say it's good for the people just getting into this saying, oh, I never thought of that. Like seeing all these different perspectives.
Right.
I think it's helpful.
Yeah, and I say, Lou, I think that you've kind of implemented the post-disclosure strategy by creating this forum, this show. I think that conversations like these are going to be even more and more important once the truth gets dropped on everyone. They're going to need discussions like this to make sense of everything.
Yeah, I know. Well, you're right. I don't mean to toot my own horn, but beep, beep. Like it's CNN, ABC, Fox News, MSNBC, all of these major news conglomerates are not going to know how to talk about this if and when this truth bomb does come out. And I think we're going to have a big leg up on how to have this discussion over all of these corporate entities. And they're going to look like real suckers in 3 to 5 years when this stuff really starts dropping. I think the only people in that field that are going to have a great grasp of it are going to be like a Gaddy Schwartz, a Stephen Greenstreet, and a Ross Coulthart, and George Knapp, and that's about it. And George Knapp is not mainstream news. I'm talking about the big 3-letter, and I'll throw Tucker Carlson in there, even though nobody likes Tucker, and I get it.
Yeah.
He's a jerk beyond jerks, but he at least talks about the topic, and if he could get Michio Kaku to talk for 15-20 minutes about it, I'm gonna listen. I'm sorry. That's politics aside, I'm gonna listen to that conversation because I want to hear those kind of minds talk to the topic. And here we go. Kashi Chris with a $5 donation. Thank you so much, my lady. Great show, you guys. Thank you, James. I love these combos. Rather, don't hate me. Rather, why do you hate Akashi? You're right. You're muted.
Yeah. How could I hate Akashi Chris? She's great. And I love these conversations too. I mean, I think these are why we're here.
Exactly. All right. Well, Mr. James Iandoli, man, I really appreciate. I just love you, dude. You're a wealth of knowledge. You really are just such a cool dude to talk to. And there's never any definitiveness in when you talk about this, even with your experiences that you've had. You're not telling anybody that your truth is the truth that everybody should follow, that everybody should listen to, that everyone should subscribe to. You're just saying, hey, these are the possibilities. These are the things that I've experienced. These are the things that I think you should think about and come to your own conclusion, and that's what I absolutely love about you. And I can throw any topic on the table, and James Iandoli's either read a book about it or read 4 books about it, so the dude I love you, man. I seriously, genuinely love when you're on this show. I love listening to your shows and your interviews as well, which, by the way, you guys go check out his work, Meta Perspectives. And are you still going to be doing Engaging the Phenomenon as well?
Oh yeah, I got a good show coming up tomorrow. So
right on,
and later in the week.
Well, I got James's link down below, but before you get out of here, James, please tell everyone where they can find your stuff and if you have any closing thoughts.
Yeah, sure. You can find all my stuff on Engaging the Phenomenon, YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, anywhere Engaging the Phenomenon, on podcast, and Meta Perspective. You can also everywhere on every kind of social platform out there. Closing statement. I just want to thank you guys again for having me on. I love the show. I love the energy that you guys are bringing and the information, and again, all the different perspectives. And the crash retrieval week. This is a topic we can't afford to let slip through the cracks. It's got to be front and center. Well,
who are you talking to in this week so people can look forward to your interviews? But what are you going to be focusing on this week for Crash Retrieval Week?
So I'm probably going to make a solo video on a specific case that I want to talk about that I did mention here. Mm-hmm. I'm going to have tomorrow Jay from Project Unity. We're going to be kind of talking about his new documentary coming out, Core Secret. Yeah. And that is heavily, based on the crash retrieval stuff. And there is going to be a panel at the end of the week. It's going to be a big one. I'm not going to say who's going to be in it yet, but it's going to be a good one. And I'm going to try to appear on other people's channels. I'm probably going to be on Witness Citizen sometime this week. And if I can slip in anywhere else, I know some people are trying to ask me on. Some hours I can do, some hours I can't.
Yeah.
But I super greatly appreciate everybody who's already been contributing to Crash Retrieval Week. Again, it's an awesome way to spread awareness. Use the hashtags Crash Retrievals, Off-World Vehicles, Crash Retrieval Week. Tag representatives in a serious way. Make it a serious topic, not something like show me the bodies. Even if you're posing a question, was this talked about in the classified briefings? These are serious questions, that should be asked.
And let me ask you one last question before you get out of here. Where's this panel going to be? Where can people find this panel or look forward to it? Your channel?
The panel is going to be on Engaging the Phenomenon.
Right on.
Yeah, and
excellent.
Probably this weekend.
Excellent. Well,
I hope Friday or Saturday.
I hope Papa Dolan's there. I have a feeling Papa Dolan will be there.
I think he's going to be there.
Excellent, man. All right, James. Well, thank you so damn much, man. I really appreciate all your work, all your wisdom, and we'll see you next time, my dude.
Definitely, man. Thank you so much, guys.
Yep,
Take
absolutely.
care.
Thank you, ciao. James Iandoli, everybody. Iandoli.
What'd you think,
rather?
Yeah, it's Great conversation.
Dude, every time he comes on, it's a killer conversation. He's such a wonderful dude.
Like I said, perfect attitude for this stuff. Right?
I think he is, like, people are looking for someone who's doing work that was just as important as Stephen Greer's when he first came out. If there was a replacement for Stephen Greer, if I could replace him with anybody, it would be with James Iandoli. It really would. Like, I think he'd be the perfect guy to step in and be like, all right, enough of this. Let's take this a little differently. But
I wouldn't say replace, take over. I think that he'd be better.
No, I'd like to see Stephen Greer replaced. That's just me. But fair enough. I see what you're saying. All right, you guys. Well, thank you so damn much for tuning in to another episode of the Unidentified Celebrity Review. Your home for credible news, reviews, and commentary on everything UAP and UFO. My name's Luis Jimenez. That's Rather Be Squidding. Before we get out of here, of course, want to say thank you to the sponsor, BlueMarlinChronicles.com, purveyors of the world's finest fishing tackle since 1995. Want to say thank you to DOS Tapes. Their iTunes link is in the description, or excuse me, their Bandcamp link is in the description below. And of course, don't forget that you can listen to this show on our podcast on iTunes or Spotify. And also don't forget to like, share, subscribe, ring the bell. That way you're notified anytime we do a live show. Tomorrow, Daniel Miller is going to be having on Stephen Greenstreet at 4:00. On Wednesday, we've got Dan Zetterstrom and Jamal Thomas. He's going to be coming in here talking about Robert Salas's press conference. And then on Friday, we're going to be having Micah Hanks for the KGRA show. So don't forget to tune in this week. Again, make sure you ring the bell. Don't forget to check out our links below, which have links to our merch store. Yes, we have a merch store. It's starting to get cold out there. Our hoodies are perfect for that chilly weather. Perfect for a Christmas present. So check it out. The merch store link down below. And also, Rather, you've got a video that dropped this week. Please.
Yeah. Check out Rather Be Squidding. There's a 2017 paper outlining a new method of faster than light travel. It's the Musha jump drive. I think you'll all find it fascinating. So hop over and give it a watch.
Yeah, and we didn't even get to talk about this idea of our entire universe being created in a lab. We should talk about that maybe on Wednesday, because that would be fun. All right, you guys. Well, we appreciate you being here. We got nothing but love for everybody out there. Thank you again for tuning in. And until tomorrow, tomorrow you'll see Daniel Miller on Known Quantities, and then we'll be back Wednesday with UCR.
There was a poll. I forgot to remind you of the poll.
Oh, yeah. We had a poll. Holy cow. Yeah, let's go over the poll real quick. So the poll question was, what was your favorite crash retrieval story? The first was Roswell, New Mexico, with 52% in first place. Roswell, New Mexico. In second place was Bob Lazar's archaeological finds. That story that he told about finding, that maybe we had found these craft in an archaeological dig. 28% of the people voted for that one. In third place was Aurora, Texas, with 11% of the votes. I know that Jane probably voted for that one. And then in last place was Kecksburg, Pennsylvania. So those were the four crash retrievals within the United States that I figured. So it's funny. People love that Roswell case, man. It'll never die. It's
popular for a reason.
It is popular for a reason, man. All right, you guys. Well, love you very much. We'll see you soon. Be good.
I'm going to tell you all right now, all of these wonderful people would not be here without Patreon supporters like you. If you enjoy credible news, reviews, and commentary on UFOs and UAP's 5 days a week, you want to support this show. What's your name? Marty. Marty, look how easy this is, Marty. Pick up your phone. Boom, you're a Patreon member. I mean, look, it's so easy. You just click the link, which is right here. Just for $1 a month, you can support this show. Just fill out the information and pledge what's comfortable for you. It could be $1, $5, $10, or who knows. Just support.
I believe you're enjoying all this. Indeed, Captain. I've never seen him look so happy.
Shut up.
Shh. Shh. Well, what do you know? I finally got the last word.
Bye.